Alright, we should be live. We're back. We're working on Ygra, Eater of All. Here it is, in case you haven't seen it. This should be the last one. We should be able to finish Ygra in this session. And, not Bloomburrow, sadly. Duskmorn is releasing later today, so I wanted to get this done, so we're starting a bit earlier, so that way if I decide I'm going to get a draft in before work, I'll have time, and if not, I'll have time to at least watch like Kenji or somebody playing with the set. So before we get into it though, since this is my Commander deck building stream, let's just take a moment. So yesterday Wizards announced, well, the not Wiz it was on Wizards website. It's the Commander Rules Committee announced, I think, their first banning in might legitimately be years. Like, I think it's been forever since we banned a card from Commander. Now, if you had told me that they were announcing a ban list change and that at least one card had gotten banned, Nadu would have been my guess, like, pretty easily, I think. Nadu decks, you don't need to build them, like, you don't need to tune them really, really well in order for it to function in a way that is very degenerate and very monopolizing on the time. Like, when somebody starts doing something with Nadu, they get to keep going for a while usually, and there's no, well, you've won the game. Like, it just keeps going, and then you see if you've generated enough resources to win the game or not. Like, at least with a combo deck where it's like, okay, you definitely have won the game at this point. Like, actually won the game, not just, I'm giving up because this is too annoying and frustrating. At least when they start spinning their wheels, they're usually moving towards that, and you know when they've hit it. With Nadu, it's just like, I'm just gonna generate infinite value every turn, and maybe I'll set up an actual combo that wins the game. But so yeah, I'm not surprised at all that Nadu went. What I am very genuinely surprised by is the other three cards on the list. So if you haven't heard, Dockside Extortionist, excuse me, Jeweled Lotus, and most surprisingly of all to me, Mana Crypt have all been added to the Commander ban list. So, alright, so first of all, I own every Magic the Gathering card. If you tank the value on like 3 random cards from my collection, it's not the end of the world for me as far as money invested versus money lost. So I don't really... It is surprising to me that 3 of the most expensive cards that are that expensive because of Commander. Like, there are other cards that are very expensive specifically because of Commander. But these are 3 that Wizards has used to promote other products. Like, reprinting these 3 cards has been like this is your reason to buy products that we've released. Like, Dockside was in the second Double Master set, Jeweled Lotus was in Commander Masters, and the Mana Crypt has been reprinted a few times in things like Eternal Masters, and as a very hard to get promo for Rivals of Ixalan. Like, they did the same thing they did with Hidetsugu from Neon Dynasty. So they have printed some very, very hard to get versions of these cards as like chase cards for products to move product. Now, granted, those are not the only cards in any of those sets that were put there to sell products, so, but they were definitely one of the things that you were hoping to open when you open packs from that set. So, to see all of them go, especially, well, the Jeweled Lotus is especially painful because it only functions as in Commander. I know there is this one really weird janky deck in Legacy that apparently did top 8 a major event that used Jeweled Lotus in combination with Doubling Cube, because when you increase the amount of mana in your mana pool with Doubling Cube, it doesn't put the restrictions on the mana that were put there by the effect that generated it. It just adds that much mana of that color to your mana pool. So if you crack a Jeweled Lotus for 3 and you use mana from Doubling Cube to double, like you use other mana to activate Doubling Cube, you will get 3 usable mana from each of the Jeweled Lotuses that you cracked. So there is that deck. I'm pretty sure it only did one thing once, and it was kind of weird and janky, and good for it. Because that one's like more of a, that amuses me that somebody managed to take a card that clearly was not meant for anything other than Commander and use it to do something in Legacy. Like, that's very impressive to me. But yeah, past that, Jeweled Lotus is literally a dead card now. Like, it is about as useful in the Eternal formats as, actually it's even less useful, I was going to say, as like Fractured Power Stone or something, but no, Fractured Power Stone at least is a colorless mana rock that comes into play untapped for 2 mana. Like, that's doing way more than Jeweled Lotus is. So it is very surprising to me that they gutted the most expensive pieces of the mana base for Commander. And as far as should they have done that, I'm personally of the opinion that no, I think this was unnecessary as far as bannings go, and here's my logic behind that. I do believe to a degree in the social contract of Commander, in that you don't, I very much advocate using decks that are around the same power level as everybody else. I also advocate having, a couple different tiers of Commander deck at your disposal, so that way you can break out the nukes when other people have their insane decks show up. But also have like a really fun like mid-tier deck that you can play against basically anything. Like, most of my decks are either mid-tier or like way too overbuilt and too powerful, and I like to play whichever one I think the table will support at the time. And I do believe that you should have at least one of each, if you can. And I do prefer the mid-tier, honestly. I do not like the really insane Commander a lot of the time, like the bordering on CEDH levels of Commander games, but I certainly don't think they shouldn't exist. And I think that the mana rocks that they banned, or, well, the mana ramp that they banned, so those are good ways to turn a, like, a mid-tier deck into a higher tier deck, is basically just enabling the deck. And that's the problem. They banned enablers. Things that make decks better by putting them in, or faster, or, yeah. Better, faster, stronger. Yes, we're going the Daft Punk route. Yeah, they don't change how powerful the deck is as far as what the deck is doing. They change how powerful the deck is in as far as how fast it can start doing it. And I don't think the enablers are the biggest problem in Commander. I think the cards that they enable that are the most problematic are the problems in Commander. I would rather see a card like Thassa's Oracle or Bolas's Citadel go than a card like Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, or Dockside Extortionist, because when I play with and against these cards, those are the cards that are incredibly frustrating to lose to or to play against. I have never run Thassa's Oracle, in an actual deck that I have physically built. I know I've put Thassa's Oracle in as a win con in decks that I've built on stream, but as far as the ones I have put together, I have never built any of the ones with Thassa's Oracle. If I have black in the deck, I probably have Bolas's Citadel. Like, and the number of times I have cast Bolas's Citadel or had Bolas's Citadel cast against me, and you just sit there and watch a player take like a 20-minute turn because they have so many options and so many decisions, especially if you throw Sensei's Top into the mix. Like, that one just grinds the game to a halt. And it's too powerful not to at least consider Bolas's Citadel when you're in black and can generate like the 3 black mana that you need to cast it fairly consistently. So a card like that, I think, has a lot more. Those cards play more like Nadu, and I'm okay with Nadu being banned. I think it matters more what you're enabling than what your enablers are. Also, losing those 3, but not cards like Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, Soul Ring. Like, their argument for Soul Ring is basically my argument for not cutting cards when I've cut all of the similar cards from the deck is just I don't wanna. Like, I want at least one of these to be still in here, and that's basically their argument for not banning Soul Ring. It's too iconic to the format. It's like, yes, and it makes the same incredibly fast starts that... Except this is one that everybody has access to, and I think that it would be worse if they banned Soul Ring and not Mana Crypt. Like, ban the one that is like $1.50 on most websites, and leave in the one that's $100. That seems like you're trying to make the game pay to win at that point. So I don't think they should have gone the other route. But by their own logic for why they banned the 3 cards that they did, I'm pretty sure those 3 also should have gone. At which point you're banning a lot of the artifact mana ramp, and you're making green a lot more powerful in Commander. Because now green has almost all of the best ramp, like all of the early ramp. Whereas when you have access to like a Soul Ring and a Mana Crypt and a Mana Vault and whatnot, you can actually have a very explosive start in your non-green Commander deck. So, I'm not really thrilled with the tack that they're taking here. And, like I said, it's not because they banned, like, $300+ cards. That's kind of whatever. Like, you're not gonna put a dent in my collection. I have a Black Lotus. Your Jeweled Lotus is invalid. And I do only have 1 Jeweled Lotus and 1 Dockside Extortionist. I do have a bunch of Mana Crypts, but that's because I have the original, the promo because I collect foil promos, and a Japanese foil because I prefer my vintage deck when possible to have foreign language foils for it, so... That's why I have 3 different ones on that one. But the other 2, I only have 1 of each because I needed one for the collection, so I could say I have 1 of every tournament legal card. And then they spike significantly in value. Well, the Dockside spiked significantly in value. The Jeweled Lotus was always expensive. So, since I didn't open any copies, like, I actually had to buy the 1 Jeweled Lotus that I have. I did not open any copies from the Commander Legends set, I believe, was the first time it got printed. And Dockside, I only bought 1 of the Commander deck, and then by the time Dockside was, like, worth more than twice what the deck was, the deck was unavailable, of course, because, people paying way more attention to that than me picked up on that. So I'm not losing any... I'm not upset because, I'm down, like, functionally $300 in the collection of my Magic cards. I am upset, though, because I think they were good cards to have access to when I wanted to ramp up the power level of the deck that I was building. when I wanted to guarantee that the deck was somewhere between A and S tier as far as my decks go. I wanted cards like that available to me, and now I have fewer um, to use for those explosive starts and that fast mana that I really want to get to. Um, it's not the end of the world. I don't think this is going to ruin Commander, but there are a lot of people that are very excited about this because they have playgroups that just run rampant apparently with high power cards, and they like taking the edge off of a bunch of them. And there are people that are um, financially devastated by these cards going, and there are people that really liked the high power level of their decks and were having fun with them that can't believe that they have to lower the power level and possibly take decks apart because they've lost so much of their fast mana that they no longer can compete with other decks that still have access to fast mana in other forms. So it's kind of all over the place with how people have been reacting to the ban list, but it's certainly generated a lot of content. I think I've seen like 10 or 15 different thumbnails on YouTube, all with one or more of the banned cards very prominently featured. So I figured since I'm building a commander deck and I build commander decks on this channel, I should weigh in on it a little bit. So that's where I'm at. I don't like it because I think it narrows what you can do to have the consistent high power level when you want it in Commander. Like, it was a lot easier to go, okay, I don't want this deck to be, like, high tier, so I won't run, Jeweled Lotus. Like, I think Jeweled Lotus is in, like, 3 of my decks, and they're all things where I want to have the most degenerate Commander possible. Like, those are the ones I'm trying to get to S tier, and I put Jeweled Lotus in it because of that. Like Cruel Claw has Jeweled Lotus. He's so absurdly powerful when he's doing his thing. I just want him to do his thing on turn 1. I want him to be like down and attacking already as fast as is humanly or easily possible. So like he has a Jeweled Lotus on his list, and Orvar the All Form has a Jeweled Lotus on his list. I never posted that one. That was back when I was just making decks for myself as like, what would this deck look like if I put it together? Which is what got me started with the idea of like, well, if I'm gonna stream, I'm gonna do Commander stuff, I should basically just do that, but where everybody can see me doing it. So, yeah, I have like 2, maybe 3 decks that I've considered putting Jeweled Lotus in. Because I don't think I need Jeweled Lotus in most of my commander decks. Like, even the stronger ones, if it's not getting me my commander, like, on turn 1 or 2, or 3 turns ahead of schedule, like, one of my strongest decks that I've put together is Nin the Pain Artist, and I don't, run Jeweled Lotus in Nin because it can't get her down on turns 1 or like it can only add 3 mana of 1 color, and she's blue-red to cast. So it's not helping her to have a Jeweled Lotus until she's died once or twice, and usually she only dies once or twice in a game that I'm winning. Usually she comes down, I tap a whole lot of mana when I can to have her deal damage to herself, so that way I can draw that many cards from the top of my deck. And usually when I'm doing that, it's because I'm about to draw like the combo pieces I need to win the game, or at least refuel my hand so that way I have stuff to work with. So I'm not usually casting Nin a lot from the command zone, and therefore I don't need a Jeweled Lotus to help the 1 or 2 times that I do during a game after she's died the first time. So even when the deck is really strong, I don't always need a Jeweled Lotus in there because it's not actually doing the thing that you put Jeweled Lotus in, which is to get your commander down extremely early and start generating value with it. So yeah, Jeweled Lotus, not sad to see that one go. Dockside, out of all of them, it's actually Mana Crypt. Mana Crypt is the one I use the most to take a deck that I think is strong and boost the power level a little bit. You know, give it that extra juice to get the deck rolling. Um, and I don't really want to have to lose that one from a lot of the decks, but you know, it's gone now, so that's what's happening. So yeah, I'm not thrilled with losing enablers. I would rather see the more problematic cards that are being enabled go. I'd rather see the cards like Nadu go than the cards like uh, Mana Crypt at the end of the day. I think just having those cards around just means that you get to decide how powerful your deck is going to be by do you include these cards or not. And like I said, I want my power level to be closer to the decks I'm playing against. And that's my goal. Some people, though, their goal is to have the most degenerate and most powerful deck ever. Like, it's still Magic and they still want to win, and they want to win at all more than they want to win the cool way with their deck. So, you're going to run into playgroups where that's an issue, and not having certain cards on the ban list is enabling those playgroups to make it so that nobody else can really get in on the game if they don't have that power level deck. But at the same time, if you're the only one rolling with a deck like that, odds are most people are just going to want to not play Magic with you if they don't have that power level, if that's the only power level you ever bring to the table. You know, you're only going to play against the people that really want a challenge, or that are prepared to just basically arch enemy you for the entire game, where the entire playgroup hates you out every game because your deck is strong and fast and ridiculous, so they got to get rid of you. So I do prefer the social contract there for cards that enable the degenerate decks. Because let's be honest, if you put um, Lotus and Mana Crypt and Dockside into your includes red, like weird janky deck, then that just means it might have a chance of winning games. Whereas if you put them into your CEDH deck, you know, you needed to in order to actually get to a point where you could potentially win the game against the other CEDH decks. So, yeah, I think that they did not need to go. I really do. I would much rather have seen Bolus's Citadel or Thassa's Oracle go than the mana rocks that are really degenerate, but power. They're degenerate, but what they're doing depends on the quality of the deck. Like, you can build decks that have those cards that it takes them from, like, you know, bottom power level, like, you know, like a 2 or a 3, and drags them up to like a 4 or 5, and to get them to like mid tier, and it's like, that's actually okay. I like that because most of my decks are mid tier. I would rather your deck be able to do its thing once in a while and have some powerful cards in it, than have you sit there with a fun idea that you can't make work because the power level of the deck is way too low. Like, I'd rather see something cool get enabled and understand that broken things are going to get enabled at the higher tiers than have things that are really frustrating to play against or with be able to just keep running rampant. Yeah. Rather have Nadu gone than the other cards that went with him, and I'd rather have the other cards I keep mentioning go than have those cards gone. I think that's better for the format, but alright, so we've been going for like 20 minutes now. Let's finish off Ygra. So I went through and I recounted twice. Once I came up with 72, but then I came up with 71 twice, so we're going with 71. So we don't need the full 11 gone, but we do need somewhere around 8 cards to go, definitely, in order to make room for the mana. So, and then we will figure out the mana base. I do like a lot of the lands we already have on the list, and I don't think we need to add too many more, but like I don't think we need to add non-basic lands. There is some argument if I get rid of like Nezumi Grave Robber that we need um the desert also, because then we have the desert, Bojuka Bog, and Necrogenesis as our graveyard hate cards. But I kind of don't want to get rid of the Grave Robber because it's a way to buy back a Dead Eternal Witness if both Witness and like we have Witness, we have Vainwitch Coven, and we have Grave Robber, and it's a last ditch effort way to buy back our dead things, so that way we have access to the cards in our graveyard again. I went a little too fast scrolling. Yeah, I think I was just scrolling down while talking out loud and I wasn't paying any attention to things as we were going past them. Now we're down to like 10 or less cards. Now Grim Feast is in real danger of going. I love the idea of that card in this deck with how we're trying to win. So that's kind of what I was talking about before. I've cut cards that are incredibly powerful with this deck because they're not how I'm trying to win with the deck, so we got rid of them. And I do prefer that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm very curious to see going forward if the Commander Rules Committee excuse me, adds any more ban cards. And like what starts, like, see if we can see a developing pattern with their criteria for a card being banned in the format. Because depending on what it is will determine whether or not I think we as a player base need to challenge the rules committee or not on their decision making process. Because there's always going to be controversy whenever a card gets banned, especially in a casual format. Like when cards get banned at the tournament level, depending on how you feel about the rationale behind it, determines whether or not you think it's a good thing for the format. Like, Magic's way of banning things now is very different than it used to be, and sometimes I see stuff for, like, tournament level Magic where things get banned, and I'm just like, I remember when you would never have banned this card for these reasons. Like, ever. Basically, Wizards' main mentality for banning cards anymore is to keep a format healthy and diverse, so that way they don't lose huge chunks of the tournament playing population due to disinterest in the format. Whereas back in the day, if a card was absolutely dominating a format, they very rarely banned cards out of it until it had gotten to the point where, like, when I started playing, like a year after I started playing Necropotence, like, Necropotence was just allowed to go through Standard for the entire time it was legal, and none of its cards got banned. Nowadays, Necro would have gotten through like 3 months before it got banned from Standard because of how dominant it was. And that's one of those things that it's like I look at it, it's got like 40% of the tournament share. It's like, so we're banning a card from it. It's like, you guys didn't ban something that had 80% when I was playing like more actively in tournaments. Now that I'm not, it's like, oh no, you've got, almost half. We have to ban something from you now. It's like, you didn't ban things that were like destroying formats. They banned cards from decks that were hurting that deck before they banned cards from that deck. They restricted land tax, because they used to restrict cards in Standard the same way they do in Vintage. Back when those were the only two formats. They, like, restricted land tax which was like the other 20% of the like top eights at the tournaments were the various Creature Geddon decks, where you would use land tax and Armageddon to disrupt Necropotence's land base long enough to secure the win, so that way they couldn't cast all of the cards that they were drawing. And they went and banned land tax out of, or restricted land tax out of those decks before they touched a single card in Necropotence. Like, Necropotence, Hymn to Torok, anything. Dark Ritual. Yeah, banning any of those three cards would have seriously crimped Necro style. Like, Hymn to Torok if you wanted the deck to still exist. The other two if you wanted it to stop. But... so, bannings have always been a thing that was very controversial when they do it and when they don't do it. But basically the idea is that you don't want to ban cards if you don't have to. Should always be the thing. When you print a card and people buy that card, they should expect to be able to play with that card, and it only should be when the card has proven that it's going to be very unreasonable forever in the format that it's in, that you need to consider banning the card. And yes, there are cards that need to be banned. Like, if you just let them keep going in the format becomes like 3 decks excuse me, that are basically gonna rock, paper, scissors their way through the format, or 2 decks where it's like the thing and the deck that is designed to beat the thing. And the question then becomes is how well does the one function against the other? Obviously, the thing that beats the thing, it has to be like the second tier deck out of the 2, otherwise people would stop playing the thing because it's too easily beaten by the deck that beats it. And we have to either develop a new deck that wins games against the thing and really crushes the thing that kills the thing so that we can get back to a rock, paper, scissors format, or figure out what the next the thing is. I know, I said I was done and then I started ranting, but this is more rambling about banning cards in general. Because, yeah, that's a thing that you don't want to do. Like, the people that are angry because they lost money on cards are the same people that, in a lot of cases, are buying literal cases of product to open it to get the cards in order to have the stock to sell. Like, the cards that exist on the secondary market are not just people opening packs because they feel like opening packs, or people that are opening packs to draft with. Most of the packs being opened are being opened by people that buy multiple cases to open to get singles to stock stores with. That's where most of the cards that become singles come from. So if the people that are doing that to make sure they have card stock just suddenly lost, $100 per card for every single one of those cards they had in inventory, and they become less inclined to open packs as much to keep stock up because they're worried about things getting banned, then you have an actual issue with the Magic economy, which is where Wizards starts taking the hit. And let's be honest, while Wizards can afford to take the hit, Hasbro does not believe they can, and has been doing a lot of really terrible things trying to pump up their bottom line in the past couple years, terrible business decision wise. So you don't want them to start panic doing things because they think they're going to lose 1% off of the $1 billion that they're earning every year off of this game. Because every time they do something like that, we get really, really terrible ideas that nobody wants except for a Hasbro executive that thinks this will make them money. Or they just lay off a whole lot of the people that are making Magic. which is also not great because if you lay off card designers, you get less interesting card designs. If you lay off playtesters, you get more broken cards that need to be banned. Um, and if you lay off artists, then you get a lot of the same art from like a handful of people because they don't have as many people that they're paying, or you get worse art because they're paying all of the artists less that they're commissioning from outside the company. So you only get the people that you don't get the best artists at that point. You get the ones that are desperate and need money, and a job is a job. So yeah, we don't. Well, you might be able to go, well, the secondary market is all kinds of broken and messed up. It's like, yes, but it makes people that have tons of money open tons of packs. It's kind of like, let's be honest, Magic is a gotcha game when you get right down to it, and you need the whales keeping the lights on. Because if they're not spending all of the money to have all of the product available, so that way they can sell, so that way they can be the mercy system for you by selling you the one card that you didn't open. Um, if they're not doing that, then that's, millions of dollars less product being opened and being sold initially. And if enough of them are doing that, that's a huge hit to Wizards' bottom line. And if they're taking that hit, Hasbro is going to do stupid things to try and milk more money out of the game. And that's a death spiral I don't need to see. So you don't really want to ban cards if you don't have to, but you do have to ban them sometimes. And I'm questioning whether or not the rules committee needed to ban any of the cards because of the nature of Commander. Now, obviously, there are play groups where, if it's not on the ban list, it's fair game, and they're going to run it, and they're going to run it in every single deck that they have, and you're just going to have to play against, like, B plus tier at minimum the entire night if you want to play with that play group, and that is not healthy for getting new players, unless they allow proxies. Which is another thing I am A-okay with as somebody who owns every single card. Like, if you want to buff your deck up and you want to proxy in, a Mana Crypt or something, I don't care. I already own it. Like I said, I got 3 Mana Crypts. You play whatever cards you want against my decks. As long as the games are fun, I really don't care. It's not a tournament. The only time I care if your cards are proxies is if it's a tournament and they are very clearly proxies. Like, if they're really good fakes and you thought you had real cards, I don't want to see you get kicked out of the tournament because your cards are fake. But I also don't want you to just take one of the double face substitute cards and write the name of a card on it, and that's good enough for the tournament without you actually having the real card in some, like, bad condition that you need to replace it. Alright, I scrolled through the deck, but I've been rambling so much that I don't think it mattered. Alright. Demonic Tutor stays. Soul Ring stays. Soul Ring is eternal. It's not going anywhere, apparently. Nature's Lore should stay. Necro should stay. Grim Feast can go, but it hurts a lot. Seeds absolutely has to stay. Vamp Tutor's staying. Grave Pact is staying. Survival should probably stay, since I got rid of a bunch of the other tutors. I think I only have 3 tutors left. I think it's those 3. Because we got rid of Razaketh, we got rid of Diabolic Intent, Dash Skeletons, all of those. So, Deed stays. Hypnotist can go, but I really like him in the deck, so that's another one that's probably going to go that I'm going to be sad about. Eternal Witness stays. Kodama's Reach. Grave Robber probably stays, but can technically go. Sakura Tribe Elder. Sensei's Divining Top stays. Savra should stay. Kind of need Damnation as a backup Wrath, in case we don't have our commander out and we need to actually kill all creatures. or our commander's being messed with, it has like Darksteel Uzi thing on it. Mutation. You knew what card I was talking about. Necrogenesis definitely stays because it makes more bodies. And is our graveyard hate. Oracle Moldiah probably should stay. Awakening Zone is staying. Revel definitely stays. Creeping Corrosion definitely stays. Marauder definitely stays. Like, Marauder is the one where it's like, okay, we're not going to lose. Like, we might lose Grim Feast. I don't think we can afford to lose Marauder because it's doing kind of the same thing in that it's gaining us a ton of life for things dying, including our opponent's stuff. So, kind of need that effect. Beast Within stays. Blood Artist stays. Gate of Erebos. Giant Bloodlords. Will work Cutthroat. Mangle or Heroic Intervention. Manglehorn. Ravenous Chupacabra I want to keep. Assassin's Trophy. Again, Citadel. I'm keeping Citadel because this is definitely a deck that can abuse it. Yeah, this is like the card that I take and I'm like, okay, I want this thing to be mid-range and not like some weird janky deck, so this is a card that I'm going to take to make sure it stays in the mid-range category at least. Like, if I play with the deck too much and I decide that Bolas' Citadel is pushing way past the mid-tier, then I have to decide if I want to, like, do things to make Ygra more powerful. If Ygra's actually more powerful overall than I thought it was, or if I need to remove something like Citadel to reduce the power level, then that's fine. But for right now, Bolas' Citadel stays. Because I have a really hard time building a black deck that doesn't run Bolas' Citadel. Casualties of War. Yeah, I never cut Casualties of War from a black-green deck. Karn Great Creator. Yeah, Karn's doing a lot of work to make the artifact mana base non-functional and stop our opponents from just eating their delicious creatures while we're at it. So, and it shuts down all of their activated abilities completely once Ygra's in play, so all of their creatures don't work. We can cut Liliana. She's pretty potent for card draw because we can kill our own creatures very readily. So having at least one of the when my creature dies, I draw cards. And I think Liliana or the one triple black one, the Dark Prophecy, are the two that are best suited for this deck because the rest of them are all creatures and therefore get swept away. So I think I want to keep Liliana, but I mean, I know I want to keep Liliana. Whether or not she can stay in the deck is questionable. Trail of Crumbs. Way too much potential card advantage. Shadow Spear. Yeah, Shadow Spear kind of. We have like less than 10 cuts to make. Everything that's on this list kind of needs to stay. So the question then becomes, well, which ones are we finally going to say no to? And that it's enough and that we just have to cut it. Terra Sunder, Affectioner, Greta. Miner is still fine. Miner is fine, but we did cut all of the things that give us more creatures for our non-token creatures specifically dying, and we do have a lot of token makers. Do we still need the miner and the skeleton, the regenerating skeleton, or reassembling skeleton? do we actually still need them? Like, I kind of want to have something I can bring back, because of the Grave Pact effects. Like, we cut the creatures that can just spend mana and make a creature without tapping. And I don't think there's a non-creature permanent that we would be interested in. Like, there are ones that can make creatures, but they're usually incredibly expensive. I think the closest thing would be like Sprout Swarm at that point, as far as because it wouldn't be on the board and the buyback cost would let us keep doing it, and it still costs like 5 mana to make the first creature, and then 4 mana and tapping that creature to make the next one, and so on. So I don't know that that one's better, more viable, as far as I need a continuous source of fodder for everything that I'm doing. Because that one, it's kind of hard to make two in the same turn, whereas we can buy back the reassembling skeleton or the Forsaken Miner a lot of the time. I guess if I'm cutting one of them, and I do think we can cut one of them, it's the Miner, because we have to have a targeted effect going. Like, if we're using it to, like, sacrifice it to make a treasure or something off of Soul Trader, or to scry one, well, we cut the other thing. So, yeah, if we're using it, is it just Soul Trader at that point? Because as far as our sack outlets go, let's hop down here for a minute because I think I have them all listed. Alright, so Hypnotist targets. Dina doesn't. Greta doesn't unless I want to put a 1/1 counter on an opponent's creature. And if I'm sacrificing the creature for that, the thing is, I want to be able to sacrifice the Miner over and over again in order to trigger the Uzi things, the Grave Pact effects. Like, that's the reason why I want the Miner to keep getting sacrificed over and over again. So if it's not if we're not targeting the opponents with the effect that we're sacrificing with, and it looks like more than half of them don't target our opponent's creatures intentionally. Like, Hypnotist targets our opponents. Greta can target their creatures. Camellia doesn't target, though. Fountain Port doesn't target. Yawgmoth definitely targets. Soul Trader doesn't. Baba Saga doesn't. And Guillaume can. So I think we lose the Forsaken Miner. Alright, so Forsaken Miner off the list. Like, we have token makers, we don't really care. Like, Blightmound is the only non-token creature dying triggers this that I think I still have. And we still have the skeleton, and we can still lose our other creatures, like we have Chthonian Nightmare, to sacrifice our real creatures because we want to put them in the graveyard to get the other creatures back. So I think I'm okay with that. Excuse me. Alright, is Chatterfang like Driftnod at this point in the deck? Like, is having Chatterfang just enabling cards that are already good in our deck to be slightly better? It definitely is. The question is it doing it well enough that I don't really care what my token maker is, just so long as I have Chatterfang? I think so, because I have a couple different ways to generate a token by sacrificing a creature. Like, we have Warren Soul Trader and we have Pitiless Plunderer still, I believe. I don't think I cut him. Maybe I did. Maybe Pitiless Plunderer finally went. Let's go double check. Hey, yeah, I did cut Pitiless Plunder. Okay, maybe we can lose the Chatterfang then. Because one of the biggest things about Chatterfang is if sacrificing our creatures generated a token, then every time we sacrifice the squirrel, we would get the squirrel back plus whatever other token we were making. So that was interesting, but yeah, I think maybe we can lose Chatterfang then. Like, we still make a ton of tokens and the squirrels are fine, but we don't have... The only squirrels matter card we technically have is Camellia, and Camellia doesn't necessarily need squirrels. It's the fact that she goes infinite by sacrificing food. Sacrificing a food lets her make a squirrel, so every time we sacrifice one of our creatures, we get a creature back while Ygra's out, so... Camellia doesn't need squirrels to be good. So we probably don't need Chatterfang then anymore. Oh man, I cut 2 cards. I was at 71. We have generated the internet's favorite number. Good job. Do we lose Grim Feast? My primary way of winning is life gain. My secondary way of winning is Giant Ygra connects for 21 plus commander damage. And Grim Feast can gain us a lot of life all at once. Alright, if we come down here, start at the bottom, work our way back up. Do you want to keep the Deathclaw? Do you want to keep the Cyberman squad? There's a lot of dumb things we can do with both of them. Especially together. Like, this is one of those cards where if both of them are in play at the same time, opponents are going to be in for a bad, bad time. Like, I'm going to attack with this one and make, 2 others, each attacking you guys, and that's 2 triggers to destroy things. And if I have the mana, they are Menace Tramplers. If you block incorrectly, I might be able to monstrous one of them and destroy another permanent while I'm at it. Like maybe the thing that's in the way of my actual physical Alpha Deathclaw, so that way it doesn't die mid-combat and we can keep going. Also, everything else with Cyberman Squad when Ygra's out, like literally every non-legendary creature we have, just gets so silly if I have an attack with them to begin with. I'm so on topic for this deck. Just being able to make Ygra indestructible by sacrificing any of my creatures. Also, he's 1 mana, sacrifice a creature. So, he's a good sack outlet if I don't have any of my better ones and I need to trigger things. Soul Trader, Chthonian Nightmare, Yawgmothran Physician, Lido has to stay, Talons. I do think we need at least 1 creature that can come back repeatedly all on its own. So the Reassembling Skeleton, I think, still stays. Tenacity definitely stays. Season of Gathering. Heap Harvest. Yeah, I don't think I want to cut any more ramp spells. I think I cut enough already. Greta, I don't want to cut unless I'm putting in Peregrine Took. I don't think. Let's see, we already cut the Viscera Seer. Can we afford to lose any of our other sack outlets? It's really in danger of being Sadistic Hypnotist at this point, I think. That makes me sad inside. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want... I'm looking at the other ones going can I lose Sadistic Hypnotist? And it's like, yes, but I don't want to. I want to keep my Warren Soul Trader. I want to keep Guillaume. Keep Saga. Grace's Judgment, Toxic Deluge, Baba Lasaga, Soul Trader. Yeah, I was looking at Soul Trader and Physician. I'm like, do I have any of my sack outlets that I can get rid of? And the answer is I can. I don't want to, because each one of them is giving me a different benefit from being the sacrifice outlet. Except for the ones that draw me cards, but I kind of want all of the card draw that I have right now. Like, I'm a little sad I don't have more card draw. So, Harvest, Camellia, the Vault, Cottage, Greta, Erisunder, Safekeeping, Mortality Spear, Dina, Witherbloom. I can cut Witherbloom. I've cut a bunch of the really expensive creatures from this deck. So it's possible I can cut Witherbloom also. Out of the ones that I had on the list, I think Witherbloom is doing the most good for the deck, though. I'm sorry if you can hear that when I'm talking. The microphone isn't picking up when I'm not. It sounds like the washing machine is angry. Basement. Yeah, I really don't want to cut Witherbloom. I think we do keep her. But that means other stuff has to go. I am wondering if we could lose, like, the Blood Artist or the, I think the Blood Artist because it targets, especially since we lost the Miner. Because that leaves us with Bastion and Zulaport and Vein Ripper. Right, I didn't cut the Vein Ripper yet. Let me double check that because I might have. Oh, I did cut the Vein Ripper. Okay, then maybe not. Maybe we... I was thinking we still had the Vein Ripper on the list, but if we don't, then I kind of need something in play that's gaining me life when my things die, so that way opponents are taking more damage from my things dying. I was thinking maybe we could lose the Zulaport Cutthroat, but looking at Bastion when I was thinking about it, I believe. Like, do we need all of the Aristocrats cards? And it's like, we don't need all of them, so which ones can we afford to get rid of? And the answer is no, we've gotten rid of all of the ones I think we can afford to get rid of at this point. Yeah, definitely get rid of any of those. Daya. Alright, maybe it really is the Grave Robber. We have Necrogenesis, we have Bojuka Bog. I feel a lot better if we had ways to hate on the graveyard that were reusable. Like, I hate doing, like, if we lose Necrogenesis, we don't have a way to get it back except Eternal Witness. Whereas if we lose the Grave Robber, we still have Eternal Witness, Chthonian Nightmare, Vainwitch Coven. So we have ways to continue hating on the graveyard. Like to get back our graveyard hate unless it gets exiled. Whereas we only have one way to get back Necrogenesis if it dies. So That's a little bit frustrating to lose. I don't like not having graveyard. Like, having access to graveyard hate is one of those things I think is essential in Commander. There are just way too many decks that use the graveyard as a resource. I don't think you can ever, not have graveyard hate in your Commander deck. And have it be, like, reasonable to do so. Like, you can absolutely not put any graveyard hate in your deck whatsoever, and then you're really beholden to the people that have graveyard hate when the graveyard shenanigans start happening. Kind of like, not packing removal for every card type. You are really opening yourself up to losing to any of the card types because of that. Maybe not battles, because battles eventually turn into other things, but all of the other card types kind of desperately need hate. And if you have a catch-all removal spell that blows up all permanent types, then probably have enough coverage for battles. It depends on how they're winning with the battles. Like, either you need counter spells for the ones that turn into spells, that, like instants and sorceries, or you need to have the other permanent type hate for the ones when they flip over into the problematic creatures, enchantments, or whatnot. I don't know that any of them turn into, like, specifically an artifact, like a non-creature artifact. I know there are ones that turn into enchantments and ones that turn into creatures, and at least one turns into an artifact creature. And there's a couple of them that turn into, like, big bomby spells. I forget if they're actually classified as instants or sorceries, because it doesn't really matter. You cast them during the resolution. But yeah, definitely don't want to go too low on the graveyard hate. And I don't know that a one-shot land coming into play, a one-shot land activation, and the enchantment are enough if I don't have either other deserts, which I'm not planning on running, or the other option is Crucible of Worlds type effects, which we do not have room for, and is not a thing our deck really wants to care about, so. Alright, maybe it is the Hypnotist. Like, it's one of the few cards that I'm even seriously considering cutting. So because of that, if we're struggling this much for cuts, then it kind of has to be. Yeah, maybe it is Grave Robber and we just have to... Alright, so Gather was down before, so... Scavenger Grounds, Scavenging Grounds. What's the actual name of this thing? There's Talent. Must be Scavenging then, because I don't see the land. They spell Scavenging? Scavenging Ooze. Alright. Try this then. Oh no, it is Scavenger Grounds. Why did I not see it? Okay. The Scavenger Grounds is from Hour of Devastation. So. Right, there's no other... How would I want to look for this? We want to go... Our color identity is black-green. Get rid of that. We need... Type line is land. And game text... It's gotta have the word exile in it, but depending on how it's worded, will determine whether or not it, like, what other words go around it, and I think there's enough different ways. That exiles itself. That's not it. Bog Trawler could be a land, but it's kind of in the same vein as Scavenger Grounds at that point. The only upside is that it's a black source that can come into play untapped. So maybe from my graveyard, so that's not helping. Hive of the Eye Tyrant can't exile in response to the combo going off, which is kind of what you need. Like, it's nice that it can hate on cards out of the graveyard, but we already have Restless Cottage for that anyway. Yeah, so the only lands that are exiled, so it's either Scavenger Grounds or Boggart Trawler, and the Trawler again can't exile at instant speed, so yeah, I think it's got to be the Scavenger Grounds then. Okay. Yeah, we get rid of the Grave Robber, we get rid of Hypnotist. Could still be Witherbloom. The fact that I'm considering going less than 40 lands does push me a little more towards cutting her, but I still think, like, 7 mana is not unreasonable in a deck with, like, 38 lands. So, instead of the 40, plus other ways to ramp. Heaped Harvest, Sanguine Bond, Enduring Tenacity, Bones of Wildwood. What are our last couple cuts going to be? So we're at that point now. Alright, so Grave Robber and Hypnotist are down. Brings us to 67. I still want at least 4, possibly 5 more cuts. I really, really don't want to cut Grim Feast. Like, Grim Feast might be one of those cards that I should cut, but I'm not going to at this point. Like, I really want to do the thing where I gain all of this life because all of your stuff is dying and that kills you. Poor Cutthroat. Alright. Real talk here. So, I was considering the Zulaport Cutthroat or the Blood Artist before, because I thought we still had more of them. Do I actually need the... I kind of do. Like, if we ever get into the part where we're going infinite with Camellia or Confectioner, we need something that triggers when my creatures die. Yeah, I was thinking, like, the minimal life gain that we get from these might not be worth it, but that's still how the infinite combo works when we need to, either pull out a game that we had no business winning or kill somebody who's gained infinite life and can hold off Ygra. So yeah, I guess we do need them. I like the Manglehorn because it makes their things come into play tapped, and it only costs 3. I like the Druid of Purification because it kills a lot more stuff. So one goes like the Manglehorn goes really well with Nightmare because it just keeps killing things over and over again without requiring um something else of significantly less mana cost to die in order for us to be able to generate the energy we need in order to recur it. That being said, we do have a lot of cheap creatures, so it's not that hard to still get into the loop. Like, we just need a 1 or a 2 in order to loop a 4-drop creature. As many times as we have mana. So maybe we don't. We have enough ways to kill an artifact or enchantment to begin with. Maybe we can afford to lose the Manglehorn. I do like the idea of their stuff coming into play tap that does disrupt random combo decks that can go infinite. You know, like anything that does a Splinter Twin variant. And it's not like we didn't just get. I mean, it's hard to go infinite with the ones that require a mana investment, but we did just get the Jolly Balloon Man, and there are definitely people that have been doing stuff with the non Kiki ones and still going infinite. The ones that require a mana investment. So, is a little bit tempting to leave the Manglehorn in. I guess if I keep running into people like that when I'm playing this deck, I might want to swap out the Druid for the Manglehorn or something, but I think that's okay. Because we do have plenty of ways to kill an artifact already, including a recursive way to do so. Actually, at that point, did we cut Glissa yet? Because maybe with Nightmare, I think we did cut Glissa. I don't remember seeing her when we were scrolling through. Yeah, Glissa's gone. Okay, so I was gonna say if we have Glissa still on the list, we should cut Glissa and keep the Manglehorn. But I think because I put Nightmare in, I was okay with cutting the Glissa, and with the idea that we would just recur one of the artifact hate creatures. Now we're losing one of them, so we only have the Druid. I mean, eventually we could get to the part where we get the Deathclaw back if we target enough creatures with low casting costs, so we are generating energy. Also, as long as it is the creature with the activate ability and not like copying the spell with a creature that copies spells, so that way you keep copying the same spell over and over again to make more copies of the creature. Karn will shut that down, so we're only half as vulnerable as we would be to combos like that. Yeah, now we need the oh, I always forget what the 2 cards are called. There's one that's from the big score, and it's a variation on the one from Theros that is a Strive card, like Twin Flame, maybe? That sounds accurate. Where you do those with the Echo Mage or something. Dualcaster Mage. 2 red and 1 copies a spell on the stack. So that way you just make infinite dual mages. Alright. I keep considering Witherbloom, and she's one of the few things that I'm still like, yeah, I can see cutting her, so at this point I think she goes. Skeleton, Ito, Yawgmoth. Yeah, none of these really. Soul Trader, Baba Saga, Deluge, Judgment. Really don't want to cut Guillaume. Definitely keeping the Blight Mound. Purification. So we cut those two. That brings us down to 65. Alright. Start back at the bottom with the Commander stuff and the universes beyond and work our way back up again. Yeah. Deathclaw, Cyberman Squad, Root of Purification, Banewitch Coven, Blight Malice, Blight Mound, Guillaume. He's an onboard trick, but he's also hard to kill himself because I can sacrifice any of my other creatures to save him while Ygra's out. Yeah, I hate cutting Guillaume. Like, they basically have to exile him if they want to destroy my other creatures. Um, as long as as long as I have a creature I don't care about, they never get to destroy the creature I do care about while Guillaume's in play. So that's assuming I have no other food available to me. And if I don't have the actual infinite combo, like if I'm not draining from my things dying, it's still a way to protect all of my stuff from non-exile removal while I have Camellia or Confectioner out, and I'm just trying to find the win with those two. It's just like, okay, I sacrifice, anything and immediately get a replacement thing to sacrifice to protect my actual things that I care about. So you really have to overload my mana at that point. Don't love your chances. That's where we've gotten to. Really want to keep all of these things now. Yeah, regardless of whether or not it should be Greta or Peregrine, it's not changing the number on the list. I might leave it Greta for right now, with the idea that if I actually physically construct the deck, I would see how it plays and decide if I would be better off with Peregrine Took instead. Did actually cut those two off this, so we need to hear that. Or I have to do a recount to make sure I cut them from the list. Is it Liliana? She's card draw, she's creatures, she's a way to sacrifice stuff. At sorcery speed. My turn. Like, the fact that I can't sacrifice things to her at instant speed loses a little bit of the luster, but let's be honest, if I minus her and I have out a Grave Pact, that's an awful lot of dead creatures on everybody else's side of the table. Yeah, Barter and Blood gets way better when your opponents have to lose creatures for the creatures you're losing also. It might be, though. She might be, like, in that regard, she might be win more. Like, I might just be able to keep sacrificing stuff regardless, and therefore killing all of the creatures on board anyway. So there's that. Um, we have better card draw, and she's not optional too. So if I'm winning and she starts to get problematic because I'm going to deck myself in the process of winning, like I'm drawing a card for every life that people are losing and the life totals are too high, and I might not even be able to get to a point where I can make them lose more life per card I'm drawing as my creatures die. So yeah, at this point, if it's a consideration, it's probably the cut. All right, one more, and then the last one should be Grim Feast, but I'm gonna keep it, and we're gonna run 63 spells. But I need at least one more cut. Is there anything else that's even kind of cuttable right now? If I had more options over the Defiant Bloodlord, I probably would cut it only because it's a 7 drop, but I'd still want something else to replace it. So I don't think that matters either way. Like, there's a part of me that could see cutting the Bloodlord for the 3/2 that drains 1 when I gain life, just because it's way more castable in the deck at this point, but we still have other 7 drops that I do feel comfortable we can cast. So the biggest thing about the Bloodlord is that it gets swept away with all of the other stuff. Like, I can never use Seeds of Innocence with the Bloodlord. I need like Tenacity or Sanguine Bond. Bloodlord and Vito and Dina, they're all getting swept away by the card, and I won't gain the life until they're dead. So there's no trigger. So at that point, is it better to have one that's cheaper but does less damage when it's not dying? Or when when it's cheaper but it's also doing less damage when it's functional, and there are gonna be times where like huge things are dying and I'm gaining tons of life and I'm dealing one because of it. So like Dina is at least a sacrifice outlet, so she gets on the list by pulling double duty here. Although it's possible I could lose Dina and have Sadistic Hypnotist back. If I decide her life gain triggers life loss isn't quite good enough, and I want a better sacrifice outlet creature at that point. But yeah, I want this. I want the other sacrifice outlet more. I think the other. Actually, no. Dina's still better than the vampire. So if I was cutting her, I would not cut her for the 3/2 vampire just to have a life gain drains the opponent's effect. Come on, one more card. What is the worst card still on the list besides Grim Feast? Shut up. Possible I can cut one more redundant card. We already cut Atomize from the removal. I don't know. Or to lose one more. Yeah, I don't know that I can afford to lose one more. removal package. I think the ramp's been trimmed down enough. I already cut Lily from this list now. Is it the Shadow Spear? I really like the idea of having Shadow Spear in play when I have the I gain life, you lose life, because then Ygra doesn't even have to trample over for anything. You're basically going to die because Ygra is Titanic. So even if something takes all of the damage on your behalf, you could still lose so much life from my other things from gaining life off Ygra, as long as it doesn't do damage prevention. As long as Ygra is actually hitting the thing, like if you're making Ygra lose trample or something and chump blocking her, it still would get there from the life gain. Hypnotist is gone now. Yeah, I don't want to cut the Shadow Spear. I really don't. For the same reason that I kind of want Grim Harvest on the list. Is if we're killing our opponents by gaining life, then giving my Titanic commander trample and lifelink seems like the easiest way to win the game through that venue. Like, we can grow Ygra huge, possibly gaining life in the process, and then attack with Ygra and gain even more life and deal a ton of trample damage and just kill multiple players. So, yeah, I really don't want to lose that. Don't have room to cut any more ramp. It's gotta be either removal or one of the oddball spells that is in the deck and is doing a thing. Yeah, I passed Bolas' Citadel and I'm like, do I want to cut that? It's like, no, I gain way too much life. The whole point of this deck is to gain life so I can make opponents lose life. If I can spend all of that life casting more spells, why would I not do that? I literally cannot figure out why I would not do that here. Except to lower the power level of the deck overall, and I don't think it needs to be lowered yet. Bolas' Citadel just stays. Alright. Something does have to go, though. Is it the deed? We're going to be a little bit land lighter than I intended, so deed might have trouble killing like 8 or 9 drops at that point. And we do have a bunch of different ways to sweep away things, but nothing that sweeps away everything in one go. The problem is not just that Deed might not be able to kill like 8 or 9 drops. The problem is that I might need to leave Deed on the table for a turn to kill like 7 drops. And that gets a little bit rough. If I'm not doing it intentionally. We do have a lot of other various sweepers. We just don't have one that is a catch-all, resets the board, and I usually like to have one of those. But maybe it's not at its best in this deck, especially if we're not going to have enough land for it consistently. Like, I'm going 3 land lighter, and while that's not a huge deal in Commander, I do think there are going to be times where I won't be able to pop Deed for what I need to without playing it first and letting everybody know that it's coming and giving people a chance to destroy it before I can use it. And I really don't want to have my big flip the table board wipe be vulnerable. Excuse me. Okay, so that's all of that. Uh, let's double check our lands now. So it says 32, but that's not accurate. So down here in the sub list, we have 1, 2, 3. We have 3. So we actually have 29 right now. So we have 29 lands, which leaves us with room for 80, 92, so 8 basics. Not the end of the world, but that is a little light. So we have Bayou, we have the fetches. I probably don't need Rot Farm. Rot Farm is a little bit tempting if we're going land light, though, because playing the Rot Farm and picking up a land means we hit our land drop next turn and have the 3 mana that we should have. So maybe we keep that because we're going a little land light. Mosswort Bridge, we have a pretty easy time triggering with our commander, I feel like. If it turns out we don't, if we're not casting the spell out from underneath it as often, then we can cut it for something else. We want our commander to be unblockable. You need a little extra graveyard hate. We are sacrificing our stuff. Having access to Agadeem's Awakening is probably too good. Woodland Chasm's a duel. Boseiju is probably the best non-basic land green has ever gotten. Like, there's way too much utility in this thing. Especially with all of our opponent's creatures being artifacts now. Haunted Mire is a dual land. Mirrex makes a token every turn. And it's an artifact creature, so it counts for other things even when our commander isn't in play. Like, I think we still keep it. Barad-dûr, if we lose the army token, we get to make a new one. If we don't lose the army token, we can grow this thing, like, basically every turn cycle. It's very easy to lose a creature and keep growing Barad-dûr, or to lose the army itself and then make a new replacement army. So, Shire makes food for a relatively low cost. I don't normally need the food tokens, but it's nice to have them, especially when we have things that can turn them into cards or into other resources. But not necessary. Restless Cottage, again, makes food, has a little bit of graveyard hate going on for it. I don't think we should cut it. Mortuary is a dual land. When all of our stuff has been turned into artifact creatures, Fomari Vault is just absolutely absurd. I don't think we can cut that one either. Fountain Port lets us turn our tokens into cards and our life into tokens. So, or our mana into tokens, depending on which way we want to go. It's, 3-tap, pay a life, make a fish, or 4-tap, make a treasure are still generating tokens. The fish is way more relevant most of the time because it will be a creature and therefore a food under Ygra. But just being able to sacrifice them to draw cards is probably enough. Bell the Profane is a free removal spell disguised as a land. With Vault, we should be able to just connive once per turn cycle for at least one. And Command Tower is a free untapped dual land, and Minas Morgul makes our commander unblockable. Functionally. So yeah, I think I like all of the lands, so if we have 29 lands, it was 29, 80, 92, so we have room for 8 lands. I think we do a 4-4 split. Like, we do favor green, but we also have, we have Mosswort Bridge and Boseiju as mono green lands, and we have and the Shire, we have Barad-dûr, Minas Morgul, Agadim Fel as mono black lands. So maybe it's instead of 4/4, it's a 5/3 in favor of green. Because we do care about green more than black, because green will get us our black for most of our ramping spells. So yeah, if it's 8 and 8, I think we do a 5/3 split then, just to make sure we're at least even on forests or even on green sources. And yeah, that's going to do it for Ygra. Ygra's all built. So I'll figure out a new commander to start working on. I'm going to pick something from Duskmourn. We'll figure it out then. But yeah, Ygra's all built. So let me know what you think of Ygra. Did we do a good job? Did I do a terrible job? Do you desperately, desperately want me to cut Grimfeast in favor of one of the other cards I cut out of the deck? Or do you just think Grimfeast is terrible and we should have an extra land? But yeah, that's going to do it for this build for Ygra, so thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day.